Welcome. Be sure to hit follow, share, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you're enjoying these pivot stories, there's an entire chapter in my book, Smart Teacher, Teacher Career and Retirement Planning, where you can read more teacher pivot stories. It's available on Amazon. Now on with a special summer series.
When I look back, I think it was my instinct that I need to, pursue new horizons.
Having pivoted from her career as a high school teacher, Jennifer reflects back on her journey away from public education into corporate training and eventual entrepreneurship. She shares the challenges, celebrations, and insights she discovered along the way. So if you're considering a career change, you won't want to miss Jennifer's story, and it all starts now. Welcome to 85 After School. I'm your host, Nicole, and this is the podcast about teacher career and retirement planning through real-life stories of those who live it. And we're diving right in with this first episode of this special series that we're doing about teachers who have pivoted to other careers. So I have a very special guest with me today. Jennifer, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining the show today.
So wonderful to be here. Thank you.
And as I suggested, we know that you're no longer a teacher or in that capacity as a teacher, but I am curious, can you maybe explain to the listeners what led you to decide to become a teacher?
Well, I think I wanted to make a difference. And I remember asking myself the question, what career would you choose if money was no issue? And the immediate answer was teaching. And I think it's something I'd already been carrying with me throughout my life. I remember as a student that teachers would often choose me to help new immigrants to the country learn to read. And I remember just really enjoying fostering that connection, across language barriers. And I also remember, I'm the eldest of two, and I remember teaching my sister how to throw a Frisbee just by changing the way I explained it. I suggested to her that she put it through the air. And boom, she got it. And so it was really empowering to find ways to explain things and, essentially to teach and to see those aha moments and see those breakthroughs. So really that's where it came from. And then when I was doing my undergrad, I did some volunteer work in Regent Park, an underserved community in Toronto, at a school. I went into the school and I was doing some creative writing at the time, and I offered to run a creative writing program. And when I was in that school environment for the first time, I was intimidated. And I was scared. And I sort of have a bit of a motto that if you're scared of something, you have to lean into it. So that experience really drew me in. And then I went off to teachers college.
I love that spark. And I wonder how many teachers have siblings who were their pupils way back.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like how you're describing the empowerment, but then also leaning into what kind of scares you and then following your heart and journey into becoming a teacher in that sense. And maybe you can describe how your pathway then unfolded with regards to you started teaching, but at some point there were certain events that happened that led you in a different direction.
Yes. So I was very engaged in my teaching career. I took on a lot very early. I was writing curriculum for the board and for OSSTF, and I was running technology programs for literacy, some of the first back then. I was running alternative programs for students at risk. I ran a large special education department. I was on fire. I loved my career. And the challenge was it was a very tumultuous time politically in the province. And I think, I was young and idealistic, and I was trying to hold the roof up, and I was watching the quality of programming go down very quickly. I mean, just to give an example, the special ed teachers, we used to call them DARTs back then. I think they're called CERTs now. We would have about 35 students per teacher. So dedicated to really putting those accommodations in place, integrating into the classroom and whatnot, and supporting student success. And 4 years later, they had 135 students. And all we were doing was a lot of paperwork. We were doing a lot of IEPs and IPRCs. And so the nature of the role really changed. And I think I didn't know back then, but I think I was burning out. And ultimately, I wanted to be a curriculum consultant. My master's is in curriculum, and I love writing curriculum. And I just couldn't see a pathway for myself. I thought, I could be a principal for a few years, but ultimately that role and that opportunity to create really meaningful grassroots programs shifted when the role really became about implementing curriculum top down from the ministry. So I guess it was a conflict of values. And I was fairly young and I didn't have too many personal responsibilities. And I thought, if I'm going to leave, I'm going to have to make that decision pretty soon. And I cried for a year making the decision. I cried for a year afterwards. I followed along my students until they graduated. So it was big. It was a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not an easy thing to leave a profession that you feel called to. But ultimately, I think you have to listen to that inner voice.
Yeah. And I commend you for that, because it's a real struggle when you're gifted to be a teacher. And it was a hard decision because most people would be very scared to leave that security. Everybody talks about those golden handcuffs, Jennifer. So you said, it took more than a year to kind of figure out, what am I going to do? Explain maybe a little bit about when you finally did leave teaching. How did that feel? And what did you look forward to?
Absolutely. Well, I had to reconcile my head and my heart a lot. And ultimately what I came to, because, people would say, why are you leaving this stable career? You're good at it. And it makes me a little bit sad, but I think teachers were so demoralized at the time. Like none of my mentors, I had a number of amazing mentors in education. None of them tried to talk me into staying.
Wow.
So I think this is obviously a big issue in education when there's times when educators are very demoralized. And I think that really impacts obviously teachers, but also students. So ultimately I had to reconcile that internally. And I came to the conclusion that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah.
And that was a big realization for me. And so what I did is I took a sabbatical. I didn't rip the Band-Aid off, but I took a sabbatical. I was pretty certain that was where I was going, but I gave myself, some space.
Yeah.
And then I extended it one more year, and then I ultimately cut the ties. So yeah, it was, but I trusted the process. I had an interesting series of events happen after I made the decision. And what I learned is you take who you are wherever you go, and you take those skills and you take those gifts. And so in a sense, leaving teaching really helped me to further understand, what my unique contribution to the world is. So no regrets. There's no such thing as a mistake. It's just a journey, but it's not easy. And it's not something I think that any educator who's passionate about what they do is going to treat lightly.
Yeah, I love your honesty that it isn't easy, but it's certainly the best choice that you made looking back, even with 2020 hindsight. This is where you need to be right now. Maybe you can explain what steps that you did. You said you took a sabbatical, but what other steps did you take in preparation for leaving the teaching profession?
None. I just decided that I was going to be open and that I was going to say yes to any opportunities that came up. And the first occurrence of that was one of my students was about to embark on a humanitarian mission to Guyana that summer and said, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, "Nothing." And he said, "You should come." So I said yes, and I went. And I might not have done that otherwise because I was so, in my career and in the rhythm of, whatever I was going to be doing that summer, teaching or taking courses or what have you. So it really opened up my sense of adventure and what's possible. And then funnily enough, my last week of the term, somebody offered me a job on just a contract. And it was in a tech startup in the legal industry, and they needed someone to train lawyers on how to use technology. So I said yes. I knew nothing about it, and I said yes. And it was daunting, but ultimately ended up becoming my next career. And I helped to build that company and discovered my entrepreneurial DNA, which is amazing. And also brought a lot of teaching principles to the legal industry. So we had a huge educational conference that we were well known for. We had a big emphasis on best practices and collaborative learning, which is the antithesis of how they operate in the legal world, right?
Yeah.
Sort of every man for himself. So I think, there's value. Like whatever you do, wherever you land, you're going to bring who you are and you're going to make a difference just by showing up.
I love that. Serendipitous. And you still got to execute from the core of who you are as a teacher, that gift that you have. With all those experiences and stepping away from teaching, I'm wondering, can you describe the work that you're doing now with Captains and Poets?
I'd love to. It's sort of the culmination of obviously my education background, my entrepreneurial DNA, and also I'd say a long journey of personal development as well. And so Captains and Poets.
And Jennifer, you're using the language of captain and poets, which is you're so immersed in it. But for the listeners who are new to this language, can you maybe explain a little bit what you mean by those two terms?
Oh, of course. So the captain is the doing side of you and the poet is the being side. So it's all about the balance and the partnership. And we live in a world of doing, right? Doing in a very fast-paced society. And obviously, we're seeing a lot of mental health issues and well-being issues, to the detriment of the poet. But really, the captain is the part of you that takes charge, that goes out into the world, that gains confidence through experience, that perseveres through challenges. It's the part of you that's always stretching you out of your comfort zone. So my captain was really at play when I was making both career transitions. And so the captain's a little bit bold, a little bit adventurous, and comes out when we need them to. So the poet, again, is the being side. So it's everything. It's all that good human stuff stirring inside of us. It's our emotions. It's our imagination. It's our creativity. It's what's in our hearts, our values, our dreams, our aspirations, our moral compass, even intuition and gut feelings. So it's really validating for young people to start to see which of these they lead with. And the captain is really wanting the poet to be more self-expressed in the world. Like put up your hand, share your ideas, go after that dream, right? I'll help you. We'll get there. We'll take some steps. We'll set some goals. We'll bring some action. And then the poet is guiding the captain's actions from that place of self-awareness, what's going on inside of me right now, what's important in this situation, and also awareness of the other poets around us. Really started in 2018. I was looking at the world through my children's eyes and recognizing that the world was becoming increasingly complex and that they really needed to get anchored in who they were and have an inner compass so that they could navigate that complexity, so they could live with authenticity, with compassion, with resilience, and just know that they have everything they need inside of them. Because less and less we're in a world, or more and more, I guess we're in a world where the answers are not outside of us anymore. Like we really have to look inside. So that's where we started. It was a passion project. And then in 2020, I got laid off due to COVID, and I took a pause and I thought, I'm going to go for it. And we did. And it's been an amazing journey. So we're in the social emotional learning space. So we're bringing that emotional intelligence piece combined with self-leadership and leadership programming to empower young people to be their best selves.
That's amazing. And the impact that you're making with the clients. What are some of the memorable moments that you've had since you started in 2018?
Oh my goodness, so many. I mean, we've touched 10,000 kids so far. So
that's amazing. Listen to that, 10,000 kids. That's amazing.
I know. And it creates ripple effects because the beautiful thing is when they learn their captain and their poet, they have them in their back pocket their entire lives. It's not a one-off. So, my hope is that everyone that we've had the opportunity to work with, to spend time with, is really elevating their sense of who they are. So it really, ties in with these themes I think that we're talking about today. Yeah. And I think there's been so many moments, and it's really kids recognizing that they have as much to offer the world as the next person, that they're, because we all have a unique captain and a unique poet inside. So, we create that sense of connection and belonging, but, we're all having this human experience. We all have a captain inside, we all have a poet inside, but, you have a very unique captain and poet combination that is going to be your special sauce. And, you don't have to be that leader who's, grabs the mic and is up on the stage. You can lead from your own authentic identity. So those are the moments, I think, when we hear young people declaring themselves, and it creates a really brave space, because once you give language, especially to poet, their shoulders sort of drop. And because I recognize, okay, it's not just me that has all these stirrings inside of me. And, now I have a means of bringing them forward. So it's really, really rewarding work, especially in the world that we're living in today, that is pretty overwhelming.
A lot of this has to do with building relationships. And as you lead the team in embracing these new clients that are coming in, maybe share with us a story about that remarkable, I know you have many, but maybe share a story about a remarkable student who ended up surprising everyone about their own personal journey as a captain and a poet.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it happens all the time. I think very commonly, even if we do assemblies with, a couple of hundred students in the gym, students will come up in front of the microphone after the session and declare that they are going to be themselves in the world, and that they are going to be authentic and share who they are, so that their peers around them can feel permission to do the same thing. Like, that's a really common declaration that we hear. I'm also thinking of a situation we launched into sports last year to help create more positive and inclusive cultures. And I remember a young girl, and afterwards she came up to me and she said, before this workshop, I wanted to play in the NHL. I wanted to be a hockey player. She says, now I want to be a coach too. So just sort of elevating that captain in her, right? And just owning it and seeing what's possible just from that pure place of potential. And so you can imagine, like, it's incredibly validating and heartwarming to do this work. It's so meaningful. And it makes me happy that young people they walk away maybe feeling a little less overwhelmed by what's going on in the world, and just to really trust their own path.
Those are the moments where you get goosebumps, Jennifer, because your message has really resonated, but it's the students that ended up doing the work because they turned inwards and decided for themselves, right?
Exactly. We like to say that, we don't have a very prescriptive curriculum. Really, the curriculum is inside. It's what's ever present in the room, in those students, whatever is happening with them on that day. So yeah, it's amazing. And every session is a little bit different for that reason.
Very tailored. And Jennifer, taking this leap in 2018, you are working with school boards, independent clients. Explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, it hasn't been an easy journey. So, I don't want my explanation of my journey to sound like it should just all fall into place. I mean, we launched and then COVID hit. And while the need for programming like ours went up in schools, there were more and more barriers to that. I'd say it's only in the last year and a half that we've seen more openings, particularly in the public system. And just from a values perspective, we designed this to reach as many young people as possible. And we were very excited to work in the public system. And the truth is, it's been really challenging. So there's a lot of barriers to entry, and obviously a lot of competing demands. And educators they're in a similar place to where I was when I left. They're burnt out. They're in reactive mode, just dealing with, a lot of crises. So we, as a result, started working more and more with independent schools and youth organizations, and nonprofit camps for underserved youth. But we are in 7 countries and counting, hopefully.
Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah. So, and it is heartwarming in that the public system is starting to really reach out to us. And because that's where my heart is. And when I left teaching, people say, oh, why didn't you go work in private schools? It just wasn't really on my radar at the time. So it makes me really happy to see that we are able to reach more kids, through schools and also through sports.
Amazing. And Jennifer, let's not keep our listeners in suspense. Maybe you can share some of your contact information. Best way to get an overview of what you do.
Oh, sure. So our website is captainsandpoets.com, and there's lots of good content on there. There's free videos that you can watch and reflect on your own captain and poet. You can follow us on social. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn mainly. And if you're interested in reaching out, you can reach me through one of those channels, definitely.
And we'll put the contact information in the show notes as well. I'm wondering, Jennifer, how do you reflect on your previous professional work experience in supporting your vision of what you're doing now at Captains and Poets?
Well, that's a great question. I think from what I've seen, I started out as an educator. I wanted to make a difference in the world. I was struggling with the system itself. Then I went on to a more corporate, entrepreneurial and corporate environment. And I saw what's possible when you have a strong team and you have a clear vision and mission. And yeah, and I mentioned earlier, I discovered my entrepreneurial DNA. So I feel like where I'm at now, like, it's such a gift, because what I'm doing is an extension of who I am and who I've become. And that's such a privilege. I wish that for everybody, that everybody can sort of find something that's really, in line with who they are, and they can thrive in that environment.
And from your experience, I'm wondering if a lot of teachers don't see themselves as entrepreneurial. Do you think that's a fallacy?
Oh, so interesting. Well, I would point out that I think the captain and poet, the average captain and poet in teachers, has a very resourceful orientation to the world. Because think about how you improvise all the time. Think about how you adapt to you have a lesson plan, but yeah, it doesn't always go as planned. And you're dealing with all of the other learning factors in the classroom. You're exceptional at communicating, working with people. I think it's important just to look at all those natural skills that you bring to the table, because if you have an idea, if you're creative, if you're passionate, all of the potential is there.
I agree. I think we have so many transferable skills as a trained educator that you just have to learn the other lingo of whatever business or area of work that you want to go into to realize, if you can classroom manage, you can probably manage a team as well.
That's right. And teachers tend to be lifelong learners. So it's actually really stimulating. It's not always easy. I mean, I did that. I learned a whole new industry, and I'd say it took about a year, but I would also add that you as an educator with all of your training and experience will bring different perspectives, different ideas, different insights to, wherever you land, to that organization, to that industry. And that's really valuable.
And I would argue, Jennifer, if I heard you in the beginning correctly, all the amount of hours you put into planning and writing curriculum and leading a department and working with your students and all that extracurricular, the effort that goes into being an entrepreneur you're already prepared as a teacher to do the same amount of hours working for yourself. Or do you find that different?
Absolutely. I think it is what it comes down to is it's all about balance, right? So as a teacher, you find your way of having balance in your day and in your year and doing what energizes you. It doesn't feel like work. And I think when you're passionate, when you're writing curriculum and you're responding to the needs of your students, like you're engaged. And I think when you're energized and you're thriving, whether you're doing that or whether you're an entrepreneur, it's the same idea. And it is similar in that as an entrepreneur, it's always with you 24/7. You don't just, 5 o'clock on a Friday, leave it behind. It's with you all the time. You dream about it, you think about it, you reflect on it, you talk about it. But I think teaching is somewhat similar. So yeah, it's not a huge leap.
I was going to say you could be describing teaching because you leave pen and paper beside your bed when you have to remember something. That flow moment that you kind of described about, really being in the moment. What has been the most recent where you just get so excited about something you're doing with your captains and poets?
Oh, I think most recently it's been connecting with like-minded people. There are so many amazing people and organizations out there doing amazing things. And I feel like when we connect and we come together, like that's really where the magic is. Like even this podcast right now, it's just talking to you is really energizing for me. And I think when you surround yourself with people who are also passionate, you start to see things in a different way. You start to see what's possible. And I think that's how change happens in the world today. It's not top down, it's grassroots. So I think if everybody consciously chooses, where they're putting their time and energy and not to get overwhelmed, but just to focus on, that one thing you're really passionate about and you're really good at, it just makes a world of difference for you and for those around you.
And I find the days fly by, don't you? Like you don't have enough hours in the day to do everything you want. What a great place to be at. It's all about relationships in the end, isn't it?
It's true. And I think I'm a very creative poet. So my poet loves having a constant outlet for that creativity. And I think that's where I stumbled in public education. I was sort of hitting up against the walls. Like, what do I do with all these ideas? What do I do with this creative energy? And I almost think in some ways I was suffocating a little bit. I didn't have that word or use that word back then. But when I look back, I think it was my instinct that I need to, pursue new horizons and see what's possible for myself out there.
I totally get that because I sometimes felt when I was teaching, there's a spontaneity snuffer with all the policies and the paperwork you have to complete. So you might have a great, brilliant idea and you want to be creative, but then the treachery of having to fill out all kinds of forms and everything, you're like, well, the spontaneity is gone now, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think we have to give ourselves some latitude, work inside the lines, but push the envelope a little bit as well. And I always remember, as a teacher, if I saw a problem that I wanted to solve or had an idea, when I went to administration, I would share the problem and highlight the problem. And then I would present the solution. I mean, administrators are so overwhelmed today. There's a good chance they're going to say, oh, okay, you want to take that on? Right. So you can plant those seeds and see where it goes.
Absolutely. You have a lot more empowerment than you think if you come with the solution already prepared and something that's doable. And you're not asking for, bags of money.
Absolutely. I think the other thing sort of related that's been on my mind lately, because I had the fortune of a lot of leadership training, formal and informal, during my career outside of education. And coming back in, I see a real opportunity there because a lot of leaders in schools are really positioned more as managers or administering, things that are happening. And igniting leadership potential in schools, I think, is an incredible opportunity. And I think would help counter a lot of the well-being challenges that educators are experiencing, right? The other thing I'm seeing is, and it's been a big area of emphasis in corporate for a few decades, but the importance of teams and teamwork, not just functional departments, but actual high performing teams. So I think if you see an opportunity to create a committee, to do something grassroots in your school, to find like-minded people, like the schools that I go to that I'm most impressed with, it's all happened within. It's not about, they aren't the schools that are, dotting all the I's and following all the policies. They're the ones that have actually generated programming, whether that be co-curricular or extracurricular, and engage staff and students to do that.
And what a thrill to be able to be part of such a team and even to facilitate and be able to walk part of the journey with a team like that.
Right. And you know what? You could even be a little bit selfish on that front and self-serving. And if you have a career path in mind outside of education, you could start playing with those ideas inside. So if you're passionate about a certain topic like social emotional learning or, inclusion and belonging, start that, build your resume. So you're contributing to your community, but at the same time, you're starting to forge a bigger path for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think maybe the newer generation heading into the teaching profession are simultaneously building a brand or building something that they really enjoy, to have options or just to be able to express their creativity.
You're right. You're right. And that younger generation doesn't assume they're going to work in the same career or for the same organization their entire lives. So I think we have to maybe sometimes deprogram ourselves a little bit and give ourselves permission. Because if somebody picked you up and dropped you in another country where you didn't have credentials to teach, you'd find your way. And
You'd
I think we have to sort of, right? And I think just giving ourselves, like liberating ourselves a little bit to look at what's possible, because I think we get caught up in routine, right? And your captain likes to be engaged, and your poet wants to be energized.
Yeah, such good guidance. I love that when people self-reflect and able to be honest with themselves. Jennifer, I have a bit of a provocative question perhaps, but if you could go back in time with everything you know now, what career path would you have chosen?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a hard one. I think, well, when I was younger, I wanted to be a psychologist. And then during my undergrad, I changed that path and went the teaching route. I don't think I go that route. I do have moments when I've been working with exceptional educators and captains and poets. I sometimes wonder, like, what would have happened if I'd stayed, and I hate to say it in some level, but like my value system just didn't align always with like going into a private school environment. Because really, I think I was really trying to reach kids who needed support and needed to be empowered. So I have wondered that, but I feel like I would continue on the same path that I did, because I do trust the journey. I think if you make a, quote unquote mistake, you just detour. You'll know it wasn't the right thing, or maybe it's just a stop along the way.
There are lots of lessons to be learned when we do kind of meander and take a different path. But I think that also makes us the person who we are in the end. I'm wondering, there's people listening to this that are perhaps contemplating pivoting from teaching. What advice do you have for those teachers who are seriously contemplating leaving the profession?
I think it's about authenticity. I think if you are struggling, really examine that. Are you able to show up as your full self? Are you able to share who you are and share your gifts? Because I think that, just to use our captain and poet language, that's your inner compass. The world would be a different place if everybody found themselves in a place where they can show up as their authentic selves and contribute their gifts and their strengths.
If you find something that you're good at that you can also make a good living from, why aren't you opening yourself up to that opportunity? And depending on what province you're in, like you could take a sabbatical, not take the big leap or jump right away. Jennifer, you shared your journey of pivoting from a classroom teacher to the wonderful work you're doing now with captains and poets. And at the end of the show, we always like to ask our guests for a gem, that one piece of wisdom that will resonate with the listeners.
Well, I think building on what I was saying earlier about being authentic in the world, I think the world is demanding more and more from us. I would invite everybody to consider that, it's a bit of a mindset shift, but things aren't happening to us, they're happening for us. So in that situation that you're in, what's in it for you? And what are you feeling called to bring forward? And because I think when you do that, the challenges in front of us become opportunities, and you'll be energized, and it'll help you to define, what your contribution is and why you're doing what you're doing. And I think just to have that center line is really important for anyone today.
Yeah, and that's a true gem. You have to be true to yourself, especially in our changing world. We know that the younger generation may not be in teaching for the 30 years. That may be their springboard to something that more fits their captain and poet.
Yeah, springboard is a great word. That's a great way to say it, because I think one experience leads you to the next. And I think that's the best lens to put on your career path.
Jennifer, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. And I know that the listeners will be checked just to satisfy their curiosity of all the amazing work that you've done with over 10,000 kids thus far, and many more to come in over 7 countries, you told me.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's even wonderful just to pause and reflect on these things, reflect on the journey, and I've found it really valuable as well. And I would love to hear from people.
Great, and we'll be sure to put those things in the show notes so that they can contact you directly. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you know when new episodes are uploaded. We'd also love to hear your feedback. Leave a review or connect with us on Instagram or Facebook at 85 After School. Hey, if you're interested in being a guest, be sure to email us directly, 85afterschool@gmail.com. That's 85afterschool@gmail.com. Until the next episode, be good to yourself.